Other terms, put in whatever you're going to put there. And then the rest are just the rules, how the contract works, so on and so forth. And that's how you're going to put this one into play. Use the one that you're going to be comfortable with. Maybe you want to start off with the touring agreement, move on to the BRBC once you get a better rapport going with your client, if that's the flow you have to take. Let me answer a question real quick. Can you put all of California or county and leave it broad just in case? I don't see why not. And per the NAR settlement, they are not going to dictate that type of thing, the specifics of the property. So I don't see why you couldn't put all of California and leave it broad. It could help you, especially if you have a client that is just, I don't know where I want to move. I'm thinking about inland or maybe up north. And then Andrew put in something about the VA and how that's working with compensation. So next, we'll go over the SPB, which is a pretty quick one. Maybe I'll just add it in here. I might have it actually down here at the bottom. Yeah, what do you know? All right. So we'll do the SPBB. So this is attached to the RPA. As you're doing the RPA, which I can pop that in here real quick too, we can see how this flow is going to work and why this form right here, the SPBB, is so important for you to get paid. Computer's freezing up just a little bit, but we're looking at the SPBB. Let's just go with that. I'll show you the RPA in just a sec. There we go. So on this one, you will check the box in the RPA, which I'll show you in a sec. If this is going to attach, and it'll probably be already filled in, but if it's not, this is how you fill it in. It will be the property address, buyer name, seller name, Rise Realty, who the listing firm is, and then the date that you're sending out this offer. Now they did modify this one, so it is different than how it used to be. It's much more simpler. You're really just filling in one thing. There's not all this extra math now because you can't get paid more than what you have in your buyer rep agreement or your compensation agreement. So before you had section 123, I think on it was like the compensation amount and then what you have and then the difference. Now it's just, hey, I'm letting you know that I have a buyer broker agreement for X% or X dollars. It states in here, maximum seller payment obligation. Sellers shall not be obligated to pay the buyer broker the lesser of the amount specified in 1A. The amount buyer is obligated to pay buyer broker pursuant to their representation agreement and, if applicable, less than any amount that others have agreed to pay the buyer broker. If there is, right here, this is the most important for us. If there is no buyer representation agreement, then seller has no obligation to pay buyer's broker. So if you can't fill this out and not have a buyer compensation agreement in place, either the BRBC or the PSRA, because you're stating in here on 1A that you have that in place and you're going to pay me X%, or I'm asking you to pay me X% or X dollar amount. But if you don't have that agreement, then this doesn't work. So that's what I'm saying. These forms are all designed in a way to meet the parameters of the settlement and for us to still be able to be compensated properly. Yeah, be sure that you fill out this form and be sure you have a compensation agreement. That whatever amount you have in the compensation agreement should match here, or should be no more than what is in here. I guess it could be less if you know the seller's not going to pay your full agreement with your buyer and you're just trying to get them to pay something, then you can put that in here. As long as it's lesser is fine. It just cannot be more than what you have. So when you're doing the purchase agreement, which we're on right here, now G3, you should be checking this every time, which is going to attach that SPBB form. So if you don't check that, probably not going to get paid, at least from the seller. Now you do have an agreement with the buyer still. So if you know that the buyer is going to be paying you regardless, and they don't care to even ask the seller to pay, then I guess you wouldn't check the box. But more than likely, I'd say the bulk of the time you are going to want or ask, or the buyer is going to want you to ask and negotiate, your commission with the seller to see if they will pay, because that's less closing costs for the buyer. That's basically how the flow is going to work. You'll have your compensation agreements in place. You'll go to write your offer. You'll attach the SPB. On the SPB, you will type in the amount of compensation that you have in your compensation agreements with your client, and you will negotiate your commission separately. Now, the question that comes up often is, from the listing side, my seller is not agreeing to pay the amount that is on the SPBB. What do? You put it in a counteroffer, which sounds like it goes against what we've been taught all these years, to not negotiate commission in here, but that's because it was broker to broker. And we're not a party to the contract. But now we're negotiating the commission on behalf of our client to try and get the seller to pay it and get it credited against what they owe us. Yes, you would not sign the SPB. Let's say the seller says, I don't agree to 2%. I only want to offer 1.5%. You're the listing agent. Then you're going to put that in your counteroffer that the seller agrees to pay buyer's broker 1.5%. You can say, to expand on that, you can say seller does not agree to 1A of the SPB, or you can say 1A of the SPB to be 1.5%. And that's how you will handle that on a counteroffer going back. And if the buyer wants to counteroffer back again, you're going back to the counteroffer, putting it back in there and saying that the buyer is going to ask the seller to pay 2% again, or 1.75, or whatever you're doing there. So it's just, you're negotiating it that way now. Are there any other questions on it? If there are, just raise your hand, throw them in the chat, whatever's easier for you. Moving forward, these forms are not hard, but you need to make sure that you have them in place. I would definitely read through all of them, and that way there you can speak fluently when you're presenting these to your new clients. And the positive with this, there's lots of positives actually. One is, I really do believe that it's making us look more professional. This is our opportunity for us to be more professional and to take this a little more seriously when you're on the buyer side, and to show them what the value is of a buyer agent. And there's numerous examples of that. I've gone over a few as well. But yeah, there are a lot of positives. I think that the chances of losing clients to listing agents and things like that could be far less. We have one question in here. As a buyer's agent, will we be able to see what the seller is paying the selling agent? No, they will not be putting that in MLS. I am seeing a lot of agents saying they're ordering sign writers and things like that, because there's no rule against putting it on a sign writer. It just cannot be in the MLS what the compensation is. Some offices are going to be putting them on their personal websites what compensation is. Can you ask? Yes, you can always ask. I have a feeling that potentially the sign writer thing and stuff like that might get challenged as we move through this in the coming months, coming years. Same thing with personal websites. Who knows what's going to happen, but I can see them not liking that after a period of time. Our RiseRealtyCA.com website will have that ability to put compensation in for our own listings only. I haven't decided yet if I want to implement that, because I'm just not sure that it's a good idea, actually, just based on what I'm hearing and reading in between the lines of what these NAR guidelines are and things like that. I think it's best if you want to just ask what the compensation is, ask what it is. I am getting reports of sellers saying, just submit your offer and ask. They're not going to say, they're not going to tell you what the seller's bottom line is. And that's really what it comes down to. They want to negotiate the full thing. They want to negotiate your commission. They want to negotiate the terms of the offer, the price, everything. So, because that all factors into the seller's bottom line. A listing agent saying, oh yeah, they're definitely going to pay 2.5%. And then you give them a low offer, or an offer that just isn't meeting what they thought. And they say, okay, maybe I'll do 2% instead. Or maybe the seller is going to feel stuck that they said they would 2.5% puts the listing agent in a, could put the listing agent in a little bit of a bind because they verbally told the other agent, yes, 2.5%, no problem. So I would steer away from that as well, in my opinion, if you're a listing agent. But can you ask? Yes, just like you can ask listing agents any other question you want to ask. They just may not tell you. Like, how many offers do you have? 3, great. Are you over list price? Maybe they'll tell you, maybe they won't. Can you ask? Yes, there's no rule against asking. Any other questions? If the seller offer 1%, can buyer pay the remaining commission to the buyer's agent? It's not a matter of can they, it's a matter of they are obligated to. So if you have a 2% buyer compensation agreement with your client, they owe you 2%, regardless of anybody compensating you from the outside. So technically, yes, they still owe you 1%, and that will become part of their closing cost because you have an agreement with them that you are working for 2%. That is your fee for service. And any money that gets paid that you can negotiate for them from the seller side is essentially a bonus of them not having to pay the full or as much as they agreed to pay you. So yes, the 1% would be credited. Technically, you have a binding agreement for them to still pay you another 1% at closing. So that is how it works. Like I said, you want to get away from talking about the seller so much and things like that, and focus more on your value as a buyer's agent and why they should be paying you, and that you are going to be negotiating this commission as well during the offer to get the seller to reimburse, credit, however you want to put it, their obligation to you to pay. So that's part of your job as well. Hopefully that makes sense. Any other questions on compensation, how it's going to work? I don't see any others coming in. Feel free to give me a call if you have anything specific that you want to get covered here. This does go into effect here in the next 5 days. So we essentially, which is what, the weekend? It's a weird time to start it. This is basically the last week of doing it the old way. I would start getting these in place with your current clients. One of the benefits is after the 17th, they're going to have to do this with everybody. Those that will not do this are going to have a real tough time out there showing homes. And if they do find an agent that will show them homes, that agent is putting their brokerage and themselves into a really bad predicament. I highly advise against that. Basically, this is just how it goes now. Everybody's going to be doing it after the 17th, which will make getting these forms signed, the compensation form signed, a little easier, I think, because everybody's doing it. So it's the way it's done now. So I think that will make it slightly easier. Do we have to do this with clients in escrow? No. But if you drop out of escrow, yes. Yeah, anything you have going on right now that's in escrow, those terms are agreed to, and it's not required. But starting on the 17th, anything new, any new clients you're working with or new properties that you're going to go tour with these clients that you've been working with already, you will then need to get a touring, the property showing agreement or the BRBC in place with them. And unfortunately, that's just how it's going to work. But if you are in escrow already, you don't have to do anything. Just hopefully close the escrow, really. But if you drop out of escrow, yes, you will need to get one in place then, because you're going to go hopefully start touring more properties again, and that will fall under the new rules. All right, just a little bit after 10, so made pretty good time on that. Again, we are doing a lot of updated walkthroughs, video walkthroughs on forms, how to fill them out, what they mean, a little more detailed than what we did today. I just wanted to go over flow a little bit today, and what is needed on the minimum. So look out for those. They are in the back office, and we are posting them in the Facebook group as they get done, basically. Any questions, though, give me a call, and I hope everybody has a wonderful week, and I'll talk to you soon.